Hello and welcome to Multifamily Elevated. My name's Suzanne Hapson, and I am super excited to talk to you about vision, people, and execution, and how you can utilize this information to elevate you and your team and your experience in multifamily. Brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network, giving you the latest and greatest news and content across our multifamily sector. So let's jump in. Enjoy this episode of Multifamily Elevated and enjoy the climb. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Multifamily Elevated. And we have the pleasure of jumping right in with Marc. Hello, how are you?
Hi, Suzanne. Thanks so much for having me and doing well. You know, it's a Friday, weekend's almost upon us. I got to say it's felt like a long week, combination of being on the road, but nice to be back in the saddle here in the office and I'm chatting with you and your audience today. So thank you for having me.
The pleasure's all ours, and I'm really looking forward to jumping in. I think that, you know, the people that are watching and listening are going to get a lot out of this conversation. So glad we could harness you on this Friday. So I wanted to start out really talking about you and how you got into real estate to begin with. Was there something that in your early experiences really shaped who you were and how you got into what we do?
It's a great question. Yeah. So in terms of like my early career and inspiration for the industry, it really was born almost out of growing up around so many different real estate players in the northern Bergen County, New Jersey area, little town called Englewood, New Jersey. A lot of people there were in the industry, so I was constantly hearing about their experiences and what they're up to and how they found that there was a very creative business for their lifestyles, to afford their lifestyles rather, and but also to I love the idea of real estate being a tangible, resilient, specifically multifamily, being fundamentally resilient, essential need for humanity, and then ultimately a wealth building tool, which most people don't understand the extent of how you can build wealth through real estate, specifically multifamily, whether it be accelerated depreciation, whether it be cap gains, whether it be 1031 exchanges, and all the different things that we utilize to maximize our family offices, our fund partners, our ultra net worth individuals, capital, and accredited individuals, of course, retail investors. And that's really what we solve for. And I think that's what attracted me, is I could build something beyond, it could build a generational business, something that if my kids want to get involved, they can. If it's not going to be, get rich overnight, it's not going to be what if I would do if I went to a hedge fund space or to crypto or something a little more,
Elon Musk-ish.
Exactly. And sometimes I kind of kick myself. I'm like, oh, I wish I would have made $5 million off of an art that was digital, and I could do that again. So that there are times where I'm kind of wondering, am I in the right area? But I know I am, because it's my passion. And so you asked how I got into it. A lot of it was really about hearing from others around me in the community about their business, and then ultimately always being intrigued by it. Funny enough, my family never had good experiences with real estate investments. They are not in the industry. This was all built by myself and my partner, Eitan Friedman, who I give a lot of credit to for helping us get to this point. And shout out to Treetop for training Eitan, Treetop Development. Thank you guys for training Eitan. So it wasn't too much of a pain, too great of a learning curve that it would have been if you didn't get the training from them. So yeah, that's ultimately how I got here today. And then of course during college, being at UBS during college as an intern. They were managing, $1 billion portfolios, and showing how institutional capital funds flow operates, both inward, outward, and also during the life cycle of a loan. So seeing, CMBS, being on the CMBS desk, kind of learning more about that, that ultimately wanted me to see the other side. You could lend to them, you could provide credit lines to them, you could provide, guidance and advisory to them. But at the end of the day, it's those individuals that are constantly coming back, that are successfully executing on their business plans that were intriguing to me. And I saw that money being made on that side. And I said to myself, well, you know what? I want to be on that side of the table. And let me go try to make those big decisions. Obviously, very difficult decisions. But it was easier for me to do that because ultimately, and we'll get into this, I was very fortunate to have bosses, mentors, specifically Joel Radman. Thank you, Joel Radman at Brick Capital, just constantly guiding me and being in my corner. Eric Roth as well, and George Niblock, and the whole staff there at Brick. So that was really a tremendous opportunity that I'm very fortunate to have had. So with that said, I think, I'll turn it back to you, but there's a lot to unpack there, of course.
Yeah, I know. And when we talked originally, it was just such a fascinating conversation. I was like, we should be recording this because there was just so much depth to it, Marc. And I appreciate that part that we're going to get into on the leadership because, our audience is really, that's where they're at, right? They're really looking for people like you to show how it was done and what it takes to really do that. And it sounds to me like you had that entrepreneurial bug that came to the surface and had you decide to really go to the other side, as you would put it. The entrepreneurial spirit is something that I think is very distinctive. And I love talking to visionaries like yourself and founders and CEOs because that's where this stuff comes from. You're on that, in that 1% to 2% of the population that is inventing or is making things better. And so how did you get that bug? I mean, was there something in your childhood? Like, I want to know, I want to uncover it. Like, maybe it was your upbringing. I don't know. But is there something that really formulated that itch? Because that's a distinct difference between, being in the corporate world and then venturing out on your own.
Absolutely. Yeah. So well said. And this is kind of the always famed argument of nature versus nurture. I do think it was very much an innate skill, but I think it was also very nurture oriented. And the bug the itch has only gotten greater. Entrepreneurial itch has only gotten greater with time. I think growing up around entrepreneurs my whole life, specifically my grandfather, who Topaz Capital is named after because he was the one that brought topaz to the world, essentially. The blue topaz stone to the world. That was a whole fascinating conversation unto itself. They call him, if you look him up, Max Ostro, topaz gemstone. They call him the Indiana Jones of his time. But really, the whole idea of him being able to go out there and start a new market for what's fundamentally a semi-precious stone, but it wasn't beautified to the level, but it had that potential, and he extracted that potential and brought it out to the world. That's what really drove me. That's what really reminded me that it's not about, I actually didn't like getting every 2 weeks a check from the bank or from my employers or whatever internships I had throughout those summers during college, both really undergrad, because by the time I got to grad school, I was working full time. But there was always that sense of how do I bring the fundamentals and qualities out from the asset? And that's really, I think, what parlayed me to, and what ultimately I would say was the impetus to why I liked doing value add 70s deals when we first started, is that I was able to put 30,000 in the door, use the vision with my partner and say, hey, this is what this asset could look like. It doesn't look anywhere near the way it looked like when we sold the asset. Fortunately, we did very well by everyone on that deal. Up in Jacksonville, 444 unit multifamily. But we executed well ultimately on the value add. And that's because we were able to see the vision very clearly. And that, even though there's bumps in the road, of course, along the way, seeing that vision with a true sense of, hey, we have what it takes And we're also in it to solve whatever issues arise when it comes, because there are issues on early 70s deals
you don't
in
say.
Florida. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. In Florida, at that scale of a property, what kind of felt like almost a city within a city, or a town within a city. And so, all that came up, but that's why we did so much of that in the prior cycle. Of course, this environment's a whole different conversation. This environment's not quite conducive for the value adds in the older product anymore in Florida, really. I mean, could that return? That's a conversation. We're all having those debates behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately our strategy is, let's not take that risk. We are divesting from the 70s deals. But yes, to your point, the vision, going back to, without too much tangentials, going back to where the vision came in, was a big part of why we did value add, a big part of why, we partnered with guys who were fantastic at value add execution, at the time. And so that really, I think, speaks to where we found that opportunity, and also where how we've transpired since then. And we still today love to do lighter value add on cash flowing assets, because there's a lot of risk otherwise, and taking bridge debt, unless you're getting the best deal since sliced bread, is a scary concept, especially for most investors, not necessarily for as an operator, but and sponsor, or asset manager would call us. But ultimately, a lot of investors got bruised pretty heavily since since the run up in rates and so on and so forth. So, and operating expenses almost 2xing since then. So, that to me is something that shouldn't be disqualified, but of course, continue to go with caution.
Yeah, now you brought up several great points, and I'd love to touch on a couple of them briefly about operations, because that's where I come from. And you mentioned the importance of really having a great partner. If you're not going to do that on your own, like own and operate, how do you go about really choosing the perfect partner? Because that's an art form, and it is so important on the execution piece.
And to my partners listening, I hope you'll appreciate this. There is no perfect partner. There is no, meaning there's no perfect scenario.
Right.
It's like a marriage. You're constantly working on it. It's truly like a marriage. And I hate to use the cliche of it's like a marriage, but it is.
It's appropriate. I really do, Marc. I think it's
it really is. You got to talk about what divorce will look like in the beginning. You got to talk about what, challenges are going to arise and how you guys are going to respond to it based on the persona involved, based on the, expertise involved, right? So it's really a true marriage that the coalescence of those individuals have to complement each other. So the critical piece is, more times than not, I do notice a very partnerships going awry for the fact that they are not complementing each other, and they're stepping on each other's toes too much. A. B. I also notice that if there's not willing, collaborative, and understanding dialogue to be active listeners to each other in the partnership, no bueno. That does not go well. It's a recipe for disaster, in my humble opinion. And then the final piece is, are you guys really complementing each other on the business plan, on the actual implementation of the strategy, execution of the strategy? How are you guys helping each other, and where are you leaning heavily on that, and ensure that you're actually bringing that up when the time comes to offer your competitive advantage over your partner, or your complementing skill set over your partner. And that's the critical piece, is just constantly be constructive, collaborative. And I think that in our industry, we're not being innovative and thinking outside the box enough. We're constantly just, hey, this is how we did our last project, the last 10, 20, 30, 40 projects. So we're doing it on our properties today. Let's just go about it. And there is importance. There is a sense of importance and credit to be given to those that, go to the proven strategies. I'm not saying don't go to what's been proven, and don't outlay that approach and lean heavily on it. rather make sure the nuances where you do walk into issues, you're thinking about it from a different lens. And I think that's what's been interesting, especially by being, you mentioned, obviously we're young guys. We're half the age, if not a third of the age, most of our big competitors. And one thing we bring to the table is our understanding of technology and our millennialism. And, we will say, hey, guys, we know you want to implement technology, but we also know that it's hard to wrap your head around it. And so let's jump on calls, demo calls, and even if you have to be resilient and push and persistent and push and push and push to say, hey, we need to adopt this technology. We need to adopt this approach, which is not necessarily technology, but it's a new age way of handling an issue. And I think also something incredibly important, and I think you and your audience will really appreciate is the old tactics don't work anymore. The old tactics of rebuke and the hammer of running an operation and instilling fear in your employees, instilling fear in your executive team, whatever it might be, that doesn't work. That doesn't work anymore. And so you have to, and it also doesn't work because then they start doing that to the residents, to the tenants, right? So they use those same tactics that can be seen as, very hammerish approach to their tenants, and that doesn't work in a new age. So you have to adjust to the times.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this specifically to our partners. I'm not saying it. I'm seeing it kind of across the board amongst most operators, especially the ones that aren't adjusting well to the new era of multifamily, which I think it's an era of absolute operational excellence. When you have no option. It's a forced scenario. You're in a world where you just experienced a rapid rise, and I alluded to this earlier, a rapid rise up in operating expenses, a rapid rise, unprecedented rise in 6 months, essentially, on interest rates in Q1, Q2 of 2022. And so you see all the, major shifts. And inflation, of course, it's a hedge against inflation, multifamily, but also not in the beginning. In the beginning, you have to also, inflation's causing your renovations, your value add. There's, all types of issues now with tariffs. So are things going to be more delayed? Are they going to be, getting equipment on site, getting, things as simple as your fridge, your washer and dryers on site, right? So, those basic kind of essentials that you need to complete your value adds, you need to complete your developments, you need to complete just turnovers when appliances or things of that nature get beat up. You're up against a major challenge that was not found prior. And that's where I think today people have to be honing in on, including myself. And I'm speaking here. I'm almost projecting to a large extent that you have to really hone in on how to become more efficient as an operator, asset manager. In our case, we're micro asset managers, if you will. We're very involved, but we don't have an in-house operation. So from our perspective, it's always like, okay, how can we help them, help our teams think about things differently, more efficiently, more cost effectively, right? And so that's what I'm spending most of my time in emails writing about. To our teams is, hey, did you think about this approach or that approach from a cost effective and a timeline strategy? And I think one last thing I'll leave you with before I turn it back to you is there's a critical importance of everyone saying, hey, let's get the best cost involved because we're up against these challenges. And in many cases, most guys who bought in the height of the market got their CapEx accounts wiped out because everything else that they need to operate is basically drawing on all the funds that you originally had reserved to enhance the property. And so really quickly you saw this removal of CapEx. And then of course, immediately to follow, subsequently you found this sense of, hey, we need to make sure to do it cost effectively, but at the same time, be careful not to risk the quality of that work, A, because I'm seeing it all the time, and B, even more importantly, the timeliness of completing the job.
Mm.
The time to complete the job has a huge nominal value that people do not attribute to properties and projects. And I'm learning it firsthand, and not in a pleasant way. We have a large insurance claim we're doing on one project in Sanford, Orlando area. It's a it's a massive lift. Of course, the hurricanes pummeling through there did not help our case. But nevertheless, you have to make sure that the time execution is treated equally, if not more importantly, than the cost factor, which of course then goes into make sure that you're not discounting or minimizing the quality of the work completed. And that's something I really want to echo, because if someone just, honed in on that for me day one, I think I'd be in a much better place today.
Yeah, really important to get that out there, especially from an owner's perspective. It's interesting. I talk about speed all the time, and a lot of my clients do as well, because it's equally important to them. And you're absolutely right that speed is money. And when we're thinking about what it's going to cost, taking that into consideration with the partner that you partner with to execute is critical. I totally could spend another hour on that topic alone. I love, though, the way that you are connected and that you are involved. And not to say that there's anything against, other types of investing and ownership, but what I hear from you in that entrepreneurial spirit is that you're going to be in it. You're going to be in it with the teams, and you're learning right along with them, but you're also, guiding, and not with a hammer. Again, another hour on this one, but you're absolutely right. Times are changing, and, the people that are executing and doing the work for us and servicing our residents, our vendor partners, they have a different way of looking at life, and to get the most and the best out of them, you have to offer opportunities for them to excel. And you're absolutely right. Technology is, on the table, and we are behind. I'm happy to see things revving up, and, going to different conferences and seeing, the people that are on the front line speaking the language is really exciting. And of course, AI on the scene is already creating efficiencies. And to your point, it has to, because, rising costs, insurance, you mentioned insurance. It's like, what did that do to the P&L? It's rigorous out there, and we do need to be innovative and think of different ways of cost saving. So thank you for pointing that out, because that's what people are talking about. And I love that you're all in partnership along with that. Something you mentioned earlier that I thought was really interesting, and you were talking about the needs that you have from your partnerships, and you didn't use the word, but I heard it. It was really transparency and trust, that you're getting exactly what you need to be able to make the best decisions. Yep. And so, am I right there? I mean, is trust really important? Yeah.
Yeah, no, spot on. Yeah. And, I think that there is an element always of trust in every relationship, yet alone partnership actually just magnifies it. But on every relationship, and then the competency factor, to know that they're competent enough to do what they're telling you they're going to do, and then hold them accountable. That's another factor that I think our industry is not doing well, is accountability. There are groups that shine because they're holding everyone in the process accountable, every last person accountable, their progress tracking, their performance tracking, whatever you want to call it, but they're doing it well. Those are the ones that are standing out. Those are the ones that are really doing well. Those are the ones that groups like us are looking at and saying, hey, we want to partner with you. We want to do more with you. And so that's something I'd say as well. Accountability might even be, and it involves trust. It involves all the topics we've been talking about, but accountability really is a driving force behind our business. And especially on the operations side. I know internally that's something we always hone in on. We built, systems and processes just purely to highlight accountability and track that accountability, track the progress, have each team member hold each other accountable in a way. And also real importance to that, I would say, and my own pain points, learning about accountability. Every day I'm trying to become better. By no means am I Professor Accountability, nor a prime example.
None of us are.
So. It's a constant challenge. But what we try to do is, come from the perspective of, hey, I'm holding you accountable, but saying, hey, I want to hold you accountable, not saying, hey, you didn't do this or that or the other. So it's also about how you approach it. Maybe less to the hammer. It's not to do with hammer. It's more to do with, hey, I want to hold us accountable. I want us to be successful. Where do we stand in the following? And that, if you come from that perspective, even within my own partner and I, when we, address it and have the right delivery towards the accountability and the right messaging, it is incredibly more productive. It's more productive, and then you say, okay, well, I'm going to get it done. And by the way, in certain cases, you might even ask them for help or questions or whatever, because they presented it in such a good delivery format, right? So that's something also I just leave you with, is that I'm constantly being challenged by it. And I would say hone in on, really, really hone into the best ability on how to give constructive and collaborative accountability messaging on a constant basis, without making that person feel attacked. And there's a fine line, of course, in today's society of being ultra sensitive and whatever. There's been an evolution to more sensitive environment, sensitive personalities. It's not our grandparents or parents' generation where you could just, the New York candor works for everyone. Or
right.
Slap on the wrist, like when your parents are growing up in school, like that. Just like I said earlier, it's not working in today's environment. So I think that's something we all have to just kind of digest and contemplate as we continue operating our businesses.
Very well put, Marc. The way that you've just taken us through that conversation is excellent. And, I am going to tell the book that I'm reading right now. I just did it on LinkedIn yesterday, but say it this way. Great book. And by the way, it's very thin for anyone that's watching out there. But, words matter. And the way that we speak to our teams and to our partners, to our family is really important. And so I love that. And, someone said to me, it was, a really now very old person, a long time ago, earlier on in my career. And they said, take accountability and say count onable. Are you count onable onable for this task? And that's what I need. That's what I need you to be able to do. And that in turn, like we were talking about just a few minutes ago, builds trust. So I love it. I love all of it. And yeah, we're definitely going to have you back because we have way too many topics to talk about.
Absolutely. And I need to get that link to buy the book. And if you could share it with everyone else on here, that'd be great too. I mean, there's definitely no shortage of a learning curve as it comes to communicating. And the more I think about it, my biggest struggles to be why I think I'm not as successful as I can be is my communication, is the fact that I could be better at it, is the fact that I could be more succinct, coherent, concise, and constructive in providing responses in a meaningful way. And I think that's not going to go away anytime soon, that challenge for me. I think it's just a question of how often I'm able to incorporate steps in that right direction and how and how to do that. And I think that's a critical function, of course, to being a good leader, being a good partner, being a good, really everything spouse, and take out all the fluff of, hey, this technique you have to use and that technique. I think at the end of the day, we're all getting too sophisticated. And of course, if you ask me economic questions about housing, I'm going to be overly technical, and I'm going to be, or you ask me about markets and what drives markets or what's, so I'm going to be overly technical, or deal issue, and how do you solve for it? I'm going to be overly technical, but that's not the key. The key is really to remember that if you stick to the basics and fundamentals, 9 times out of 10, you are going to be better off if you got into the weeds and are dealing with an issue on a technical level. And one thing I have to give a lot of credit to is the 1-3-1 method. I've been using it a lot recently. That method's fantastic for us managers. always get down to the core issue first. What is the core issue? There's always, everyone is drama. We're all emotional human beings. We're humans. Take the 1-3-1 method. I think it's fantastic, or a similar type method. Get to the core issue. Ask for three potential solutions to that issue, and then ultimately ask them what they think is the best, approach to take given that. So that's usually going to end up with the best way for your employee, your partners, whoever it might be, to resolve that issue in a collaborative way, and you're empowering that individual to do that. So I'm trying to really stick to that 1-3-1 method, stick to the, hey, well, what do you think? So always and I hate to say this because, I grew up as more modern Orthodox Jew, but we always, the joke is we always answer questions with a question. The reality is it's true. And
yeah, it works.
And many times, actually answering a question with a question in our business is very important because it stimulates thoughts. And most times that individual or that group of people are going to think of something they didn't think about because you responded with a question. So I would definitely encourage that. And for myself, it's just it's kind of in my fabric already. But for those that it's not, I highly recommend focusing on asking more questions than directives and things of that nature.
Yeah, good one, Mark. Yeah, I love it. It sounds like you're speaking my language on business operating systems, issue processing, and it's really good stuff. Again, another hour, another time.
And there's what I can learn from you on that stuff because I don't know all the lingo and terminology and how to. And I'm sure there's more digestible ways in which to process them. And that's the beauty of what you do is that you create it into digestible formats where it's relatable and, and the teams can be involved. That's something that's absolutely needed. And I think, I know as we continue to grow, individuals like yourself are going to be critical to our success. And, in the beginning, it's obviously as you're smaller, yes, those operating systems and approaches are important. But in the beginning, it's really just about the transparency, the trust, the things we just spoke about. If you can have that, you're in a pretty good place as long as, you're a nimble company, operating, I would say overseeing operations and investment management, asset management, things of that nature. Those are kind of key takeaways.
Well, all right. We have to wrap it up, unfortunately. I want more time with you, Mark. I hope I get it. I think I do. I'll be stalking you. So if other people want to stalk you, how do they find you, Mark? Where can they find you and get a hold of you?
Absolutely. So on LinkedIn, they could connect with me on LinkedIn, Marc A. Hershberg on LinkedIn. I tend to post quite a bit. I usually post thoughts about the industry, multifamily, what's happening in the news, how it relates to our business. You'll find my thought leadership pieces, whether it's Globe Street, MHN, MFE, whatever those different outlets I use to kind of to syndicate out the content. Definitely please subscribe. Go on our website, topazcg.com. At the bottom of our website, topazcg as in capitalgroup.com. At the bottom of the website, there's a little field open for subscribing to our newsletter. Please sign up for the newsletter. All it takes is a name and an email. You'll get updates on the industry. We pride ourselves on our research as well. So on our website, go to the Research and Insights tab. We spend a lot of time on that, not because it's a production revenue generator, more because it's a value add to everyone involved in the business, everyone that invests with us, and our partners. So, and to ourselves to go through that process. And then last but not least, I would say connect with us on social media, on all our social media, not just me personally, with Topaz. Topaz is now on all the major social medias from LinkedIn, Twitter, X rather, Facebook, and Instagram. So please engage with us. We'd love to connect. We'd love to hear from you, and feel free to email us. Our general inbox is info at Topaz, TOPAZCG, as in capitalgroup.com. And thank you guys so much. I really appreciate this opportunity. I'm looking forward to connecting with you.
Yes, thank you. It's been a pleasure. All right.
Thank you so much. We'll sync up here shortly.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, all the best. Talk soon.
Thanks for tuning in to Multifamily Elevated, where we hope that you are inspired and ready to go, elevated to take on your next challenge in multifamily. So if you liked this episode, please subscribe, like, comment, and of course, share with your network. And don't forget that this was brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network that is also sharing the latest and greatest in trends, ideas, and content across our multifamily space. Until next time, keep elevating, and we'll talk soon.